Hey everybody! Welcome back. Northernlion plays the Binding of Isaac AFTERBIRTH Plus. Oh, are we really gonna do the It's the Key challenge right now? I've been promising for a long time. It's the key. Let me look up the parameters. I'm looking right now. The Lost is the easiest way. Don't pick up any hearts. It's not hard to avoid them as they take a few frames to get placed. Doesn't matter how many keys you get. I got it with 0. Why would you need one? Collect as many keys as you want? Wait a minute. Hold up. It's just... I search the It's the Key achievement and I get these like life hacks. How to beat the It's the Key. And I'm like, no, I don't need that. I just need the rules. Okay, here's how you do it. Keys are allowed. Any keys. Any other consumable is not allowed. Tarot cards, runes, and pills are okay. Item rooms are okay. Devil deals are okay. You need to beat the lamb. Okay. That's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's not that bad. It's hard. Let's go. I'm ready. For second run back, let's do it. It's the key. I don't know why I continue to like talk about it as if I have like a Brooklyn accent. Anyway. I think it's telling that you know, my first video back from being overseas. Can't pick up bombs. Don't pick up bombs, you idiot. You don't even need the tinted rock. My muscle memory's gonna crush me probably the first couple of times here. If it hasn't already. Wait, do you start with a penny as the Lost? I didn't pick up a penny. You start with a penny. Does the Lost start with a penny? Hold up. Hold up. Did I already... I don't want to start this run on false pretenses, you know? Does the Lost start with a penny? The Lost Isaac. Getting mind flooded. Starting items. It starts with 1 coin. Let's go. Okay. Thank you. What I was gonna say is I think it's telling. We can pick up keys. That's right. That I come back from overseas. First video I talked like 90% about the flight. It's gonna give you the wrong idea of what I did when I was on vacation. You're gonna be like, oh, this guy, he didn't even like enjoy himself on vacation. He's only talking about the airplane that took him there. It's not true. I had a very good time on vacation. It was very restful and relaxing. I mean, first off, went to 2 Olympic events, which was amazing to be there. Even though Canada lost both of them, which was just swell, man. Just a lot of fun. I still had a great time. You got to keep it in perspective. You're not there to, you know, win the gold medal. You know, the athletes are competing for the medals. You're there to enjoy yourself in the facilities and have a good time. It sounds like I'm talking about the bathroom. I did not mean the bathroom. Nah, it's just we already got a meme run going because it's the key to begin with. But I had some time to myself because Kate's, you know, I don't want to out her necessarily, but she's really into Final Fantasy XIV. So even though we were on vacation, couple of afternoons she was like, hey, would it be cool if I raided? And I was like, yeah, I guess. I mean, it's your vacation too. Plus I was like, it gives me a chance to do the stuff that you know, she might not necessarily be up for doing, or at least up for doing with the same amount of like enthusiasm that I would be. So like one of the days I went to the Korean War Memorial, which is not a memorial to the Korean War. Don't pick these up. Nice. But it's a memorial to all wars in Korea. So not just, you know, 1950 to 1953, but also, you know, like any, you know, foreign invasion of which there's been dozens. You know, if you look at going through the War Memorial of Korea, you really learn that the history of that country is basically like, and then China invaded. And then we're going back to like, you know, the year 400 BC, and then Japan invaded, and then China invaded. Like, it's just a history of like, hey, we're having like a pretty good time here by ourselves, and then all of a sudden, you know, hey, here's French battleships to come and open up our ports. Here's another Japanese invasion. You're like, this is cool, man. Just relax. But it was if you ever, I get it's a niche recommendation, right? But like, if you ever find yourself in Seoul with some time to kill, go to the Korean War Memorial. One of the best museums I've ever been to in my life. First off, very interesting. All the exhibits, multiple languages, including English. But beyond that, it's also, and I'm just being overly cautious about consumables here, forgive me, but it's the key to this challenge, But also outside, it has like one of the coolest displays I've ever seen, which is basically like a bunch of military equipment from the Korean military history, but full size, like not replicas. Some of them were replicas, but many of them were just, I think, either defunct military equipment or, you know, like retrofitted to not be able to drop a, you know, a nuclear-tipped bomb sort of stuff. Like there was a, I don't know, maybe they were models now that I think about it, but still they were to scale. So, you know, just outside of the museum, there's like maybe 300 meters squared of like anti-aircraft guns that you can look at, you know, you can go up to and examine yourself, and, you know, a B-52 bomber and all these like cargo transport planes and, you know, missiles that, you know, are just, it really puts it in perspective, I guess, when you walk up to this, like walking up to the B-52 bomber they had there, I was like, this is the largest thing I've ever seen in my entire life since I looked down at my pubic region when I went to the bathroom. It was just stunning. Really, really cool. And then it also is a great jumping off point. I mean, if at one hand you're like, as an adult, I was going through this and I was like, this is very somber, because the Korean War happened not within my lifetime, but within a human lifetime. And it's amazing, really, when you go through it. This is like the most touching that the Isaac videos will ever get, but it's amazing when you go through it and you're like, wow, like the country was all sorts of messed up in the 1950s. I mean, first off, you know, it was occupied by Japan, only became freed when the Second World War ended to begin with, in 1945. Then 1950, we're not going to take the D4, obviously. 1950, North Korea invades, and then the UN comes in and helps them push back, and then China helps North Korea push back, and they reach this kind of stalemate that's still there. But the point is that since then, in 60 years, the country has grown from kind of like, let's put it this way, it's grown from like a developing nation into a genuine first world power. That's incredible. Like, it gave me new perspective when I would be walking outside and an 80-year-old person would push past me on the subway impatiently, despite me walking faster than them to begin with, and then they just get in front of me and slow. Look, it's not about that, okay? But you're like, man, this guy, maybe he fought in the Korean War, maybe he didn't, but he lived through his country, like, growing into a first world power. That's incredible. That's a perspective that I can't even imagine, you know? I don't know about this one, dude. It seems a little dicey. Let's do it. We can't use bombs anyway, so just remember, we don't want to pick up consumables. We just want to get items out of these if possible. Not that one, though. But then secondly, you know, you're in the museum, and you know, you really, you get up close and personal. You see this, like, surface-to-air missile launcher or something like that, and you're like, oh my god, this is a tool designed to kill. And it's very, as an adult, I was like, it's very somber that this, you know, if we ever found ourselves in a situation like this again, I could be drafted and you know, I could have one of these pointed at me one day. Hopefully it doesn't happen for, like, you know, another, like, 15, 16 years. If it does, in which case I'll probably be out of conscription age, maybe, but, you know, the point is, like, you know, I'm of that generation. When you're like 10, you're like, I don't care if a war breaks out. I'm not gonna get drafted. I mean, you're like, man, you probably care, but you get the idea. It's maybe less visceral if you're as self-interested as I am, apparently. Okay, you might as well take the keys. But then, of course, it wouldn't be, you know, a Northernlion bit without me being a little bit of a curmudgeon. There were a lot of kids at the museum. And I'm not even ready for the joke yet, okay? Because I've got to build the moment just a little bit more. Like, when you enter the museum, you walk through essentially like a hall of the names of the dead and wounded, and, well, maybe not wounded, but I don't speak Korean, but you know, the missing soldiers from the Korean War. You walk through like I think we should still go here. Big mistake. A hall that's just like marble tablets enshrined with the names of the people that died or went missing during the Korean War. We don't even need placenta. And so you walk for like a minute and you're like, oh my god, I walked for like a minute straight. Each one of these plaques has like 1,500 names on it. That's it really puts a sense of scale for like the amount of the loss of life that happened, right? So I'm in this mood, and then I go outside, and there's like, you know, like I said, there's these anti-aircraft guns and stuff like that, and people are like pushing their kids and going like, hey, go up and, you know, pretend that you're firing the anti-aircraft gun, and I'll take a picture of it. And I was like, is this okay? Like, I really am conscious of the fact that I'm essentially like, I'm my own kind of cultural invader, I guess, in a way, and I'm going, I know, like, you live here, and, like, your parents or grandparents maybe were, like, personally affected by the war, but is it okay for you to tell your 8-year-old child to pretend to be shooting down, like, a North Korean warplane with this anti-aircraft? He posted on, I don't know what he posted on, let's be honest. Maybe they're posting it, like, at the War Museum having a great day with my son, or I don't know. I guess it doesn't matter in the whole scheme of things. But I was like, I genuinely went through a moment, and I don't blame the kids, okay? I want this to be clear. That's one of the things that I think is cool about the museum, is that if you're a kid and you don't really, you know, I'm not saying you lack the capacity, but, you know, let's be honest. When you go there and, you know, there's like an 80-year-old dude who lost an eye in the war crying, you're like, I don't get it. I just don't get it. I'd rather be watching Pororo right now. But, I said Pororo, okay? Not, you might have thought I said, some illicit content that starts with a P. It's just because my accent's not that great. But the point is, as an adult, that kind of stuff, it hits you more easily, because, you know, you might have family of your own that you can relate to, or you're like, wow, this could have been me. If not, were it not for, you know, the grace of my parents, you know, delaying conception. Although they weren't alive when the Korean War started to begin with. But you get the idea. You know, couple of early teenage pregnancies, that's me in the Korean War, instead of me making my living cracking jokes at other people's expense on the internet. Depending on how much you believe in a deterministic universe, I guess. Please, good items. This is scary. Almost got him. I know we could / probably should use... No. Great, you're still going. You don't need the range. You can't even pick up that heart, which is beautiful. I think you're still good on the challenge here, to be honest. But yeah, like, as an adult, you get it. As a kid, you're like, cool, I can look at the warships and stuff like that. I like that. I think it's a good kind of all-ages museum, believe it or not, despite it being about an incredible, you know, loss of human life. However, I did go through a moment, and this is not just me making a joke. I went through a moment of being like, we're screwed. Like, human beings are absolutely, we're done. We just can't, you know, like the idea of the great filter, that's like any population sufficiently advanced is at great risk to accidentally, not accidentally even, but the idea is like, if the universe is so big, then the odds of having intelligent life out there is very high, so why haven't we seen them? Well, the great filter is the one possible, like, null hypothesis to deal with it, which is like, well, maybe any power sufficiently technologically advanced to engage in spaceflight could also easily destroy itself, you know, and the idea for humanity was like, maybe that would happen with nuclear war or something like that, but you get the idea, or environmental collapse. Anyway, I had that moment where I was like, human beings are just, like, we're done. We're done from get-go. And I was like, this is like a billion-dollar monument to the tragedy of war. And again, the 8-year-olds who are like, oh, cool, a gun. Innocent. Completely innocent. But I was looking at these, like, 20-something, 30-something, 40-something parents and going, hey, why are you encouraging your child to pretend to be shooting a tank? This whole, literally, there's like inscriptions on the, you know, the marble slate around the entire grounds of the museum being like, this is a monument so that, you know, we fought so that you don't have to. And then it's like, you're telling your kid, hey, get up on the howitzer missile, Johnny. I want to take a good photo for Facebook. Again, I want to stress, your boy knows that he's also a weirdo. So I'm the only idiot on Earth that maybe not the only idiot, but me and a couple other people on planet Earth go to a museum and be like, yeah, the exhibits were really cool, but what was most entertaining was watching other people act badly. And in the end, it is kind of harmless. I'll admit, it's harmless that they were, you know, you're just having a fun day with your kids and going, you know, they want to jump up on it and I'm going to take a photo. But I was kind of like, I don't know. Maybe I was projecting. I felt like it should have been treated with more decorum than it was. Why does this tie into, like, human beings are screwed? Because I was like, we're still looking at this, like, ship that drops, like, thousands of kilograms of bombs, and we're going, what a sick toy. Isn't that, like, badass? I don't know. It kind of is. Like, I guess when I look at it, I go, that's, like, it's so badass from, like, an engineering standpoint. But I don't know. Maybe I'm projecting. I'm not saying don't have fun at the museum, by the way. If you see Night at the Museum, all-time Stiller classic. I'm just joking. I was 18 when it came out. I don't really like Night at the Museum that much. Anyway. Maybe it's me that's wrong. Are you? Ew, I knew it! I knew it! I was like, that dude's invisible. Gosh darn it. And then I yelled and Tomo left. Anyway, we tried. Let's keep it going here. Get another attempt. That was the Korean War Museum. I'd really recommend it. I also went to the National Museum of Korea. I like museums, man, because it's like, if you're just gonna walk around, you might as well walk around and learn something about the place that you're at. It's also the National Museum of Korea. Good museum. A little bit more boring. There's like, I like history, but I like the Dan Carlin version of history, you know? I like it when it's gussied up and made to deliberately be like as entertaining as possible. And the War Museum of Korea was really like, it was touching and emotionally affecting and even, again, entertaining to be at. The National Museum of Korea was like, we got a bunch of pots from the year 400. And you know, I gotta admit, the first couple of rooms you walk into, you're like, oh my god, how did they make these pots in the year 400? That's incredible. And after the 8th room of like, here's a stone tool we found in, you know, the Goguryeo dynasty era, and you're like, I just don't care anymore. Show me another freaking cruise missile. It's like, it's cool, but I'm over it. We even got that way at like the British Museum when we were there like 3 years ago. You know, at first you're like, oh my god, it's an adobe tile featuring, you know, the conquests of Ashurbanipal. Whoa, excuse me. That's amazing. First off, how did you get that? And secondly, how are you able to keep it? And thirdly, wow, that's amazing. But then after the, you know, 20th or 30th room, you're like, boring. More priceless relics. Museums are weird, man. The Korean Museum, I totally got. And this is like, people are not gonna like this line of reasoning. But you need to meet me in the middle here and know that this is not a political argument, okay? Like, in the Korean Museum is in Korea, and all of the relics are Korean. The British Museum is in England, and almost all the relics are from other places. And you go, okay, I get it. You know, back in the day, you were an empire, and you were sending, you know, explorers and conquerors all around the earth, and, you know, I don't want to make a history sound nicer than it was, but it's pretty much what happened. It's like, hey, I'm here and I have a gun, I own this land now, and all your valuable stuff, we're going to ship it back to England, because I basically worked for the queen, or the king, depending on when you lived, right? And I was like, okay, but how? Because it's, like, not the year 1300 anymore. How can you just like, well, yeah, no, we accept that you just can't do that anymore, but what's done is done, and we did build this whole museum, so I'm not even, like, I don't even have a horse in the race. I'm not British, nor am I really, there's no, like, Canadian artifacts, I think, in the British Museum that are like, oh, we had a rich and proud history, and then, you know, England took this and put it in a museum, and then it's free to get in, but really you have to pay them, you know, 10 euros or 10 pounds at the entrance, because they're gonna look at you funny if you don't. But, like, shouldn't they give them back? I know that there's actual, like, debate about it. And I gotta admit, I'm making it less nuanced than it should be. Because the British Museum serves an incredible educational purpose. I can't even imagine, you know, if you go to school in London, and they'd be like, hey, I picked up a pill. That's okay. That's okay. Yeah, I went on autopilot there for a second. Hey, good pill. Pills are fine. According to this Lutzi post. That's right, I'm calling you out, Lutzi. I know who you are. Long-time viewer, first-time caller. Something of an armchair baller. Can't even imagine, like, growing up in England. Or probably London, specifically, I guess. And then being like, oh, our field trip today is to the British Museum. And you're like, again? Yay! You know, it's like, we might as well take it. Being there, you're like, oh my god, I could just be here and learn history from all over the world firsthand and look at it. Just ask Killmonger. And then, you know, I do think that it serves an educational purpose, but there is kind of also when you're like, that's not yours. I mean, like, it kind of is. I get it. Like, you've had possession of it for like 500 years. But I do think it's funny. I read like David Cameron made, you know, the ex-Prime Minister of England. There was a controversy apparently where he had, in the British Museum. It's not like he has it. Or maybe, you know what? He doesn't have it. But I believe that there's, and I might be slandering, we need this item, I think, unless we've already had it. But this might be libelous. So I absolve myself of all criminal responsibility. That's how that works, right? Oh, I almost walked into it. Like the crown jewel of India sits in the crown jewels of the United Kingdom. So it was like, I don't want to say pilfered, but you kind of get what I mean, right? And it was taken from India and then inserted in the crown jewels because they were the colonial overlords. It makes sense, you know, if you're an emperor, which you basically are as the Queen of England in the, you know, 19th century, you need the crown jewel, you know, because it's the crown jewels. You know, every one of them represents like a overseas holding essentially that you have. But you know, it's not the year 1850 anymore. I believe there was like a push in India that was like, hey, can we have that crown jewel back? And David Cameron was like, we get it. It kind of was yours, but at the same time, if we open the floodgates of returning a relic from the British Museum, what's to stop other people from asking for theirs back? And I was like, dude, I think you sort of owned yourself. Like, I think you sort of... Yeah, you get it. You're starting to catch on now. Again, I don't have a horse in the race. I think I probably would, maybe, if I were from, you know, a country that was more affected by it. But I find it more kind of amusing that he was like, yeah, it's yours, but if we give it back, we'll have to give everybody's back. And you're like, well, you said it. And again, I love a good museum. I'm not trying to, I forget the curse term, dude. I'm not trying to act like the British Museum is like, you know, it only exists because of conquest and it perpetuates the idea of, you know, I'm trying to, I don't even know, manifest destiny or something like that. I'm spinning my wheels verbally here, but I do think it's kind of funny that we're like, yeah, it's like, it's bad, but like, they spent so much money on building it and it serves such a good cultural purpose. Can't you just let us have your relics? Come on. If you want to see your historical relics, just fly to London. It's not that hard. Anyway, again, I don't have a horse in the race. But that's what, it was kind of cool being in the Korean museums and being like, this is all from Korea. Moreover, it's all like, it's supported by donations from the Korean populace, and I don't mean in terms of like, financially, although yeah, sure, but it's like all the relics are donated. You'll be walking through and they'll be like, hey, this is the, you know, Tom Smith collection. And you're like, who's Tom Smith? And they're like, oh, he was a lawyer and he collected about 1 million pots. So here's all the pots that Tom Smith collected in his life. And you're like, Tom Smith? You were just like a lawyer. People would come over and you'd be like, hey, by the way, here's my pot from prehistory. Check it out. It belongs in a museum. And eventually they gave it up. It did make me think, though, you know? So, like, especially in the... I know it's more museum talk. I think it's engaging, okay? I think we're packaging it for a populace at large, all right? I'm trying, at least. put yourself in the shoes of, like, the grandchild of someone who fought in the Korean War. 'Cause there were a lot of, like, donated uniforms and, you know, even donated war medals and stuff like that. And I was like, when I was looking at it, I was like, yeah, of course. Like, what are you gonna do with it? But then when I thought about it some more, I was like, I'm not donating that stuff. Are you crazy? That's part of my family history. And maybe, I'll admit, I think that makes me a more selfish person, at least in this specific area, than the people who donated their works. But I'm like, if Granddad fought in the Korean War, and he came back and he, you know, he had his uniform and he had, you know, like a Purple Heart or something like that, I ain't donating his Purple Heart after he dies. I'm keeping, that's part of, like, our shared lineage. That was, like, 12.5% of my DNA went over there. Technically, I deserve the credit. No, that's not where I'm going with that, but you get the idea. So yeah, more power to you if you did, like, if you would donate your works there. Museums, do museums buy things, or do they exist exclusively via donation? Because I kind of like, as a capitalist, that kind of, I'm not gonna say it makes me mad. But there was, in the Korean War Museum, there's a really cool exhibit, and it's 2 cars. One of them is Syngman Rhee's car, and he was like the first post-war leader of Korea. So he was, I don't want to say he was like a United Nations puppet, but, you know, he was the leader that was supported by the democratic powers. And then the other thing, and it's like I think it's a Cadillac. The other vehicle is another sedan that was given to Kim Il-sung, who was the North Korean post-war leader, by whoever the Russian or Soviet leader was at the time. I can't remember. It might have been like Khrushchev. Anyway, so there's like these 2 cars, like decked out in bulletproof glass, and you can like, they're actually their cars. It's not a relic of their cars. Like, the way that it happened is, like, I don't know, Kim Il-sung's car was captured during the Korean War, and then it was given to the widow of one of the generals who died in the Korean War, and then she bartered it in America and, like, traded it for a brand new car or something like that, and, you know, it ended up in the garage of this car collector in New Jersey, and then he donated it to the Korean War Museum. And I was like, sick, dude, that's cool. But at the same time, if I was that car collector, I'd kind of be like, you gotta give me something. I paid for this car. Like, I don't expect you to give me market value for the car. You're a museum. You know, your money is probably better served doing something else. But you gotta at least give me, like, fly me over and put me up for, like, 6 months. That seems like a long time, but, like, the car literally, if you were to auction it, which a lot of people would probably do, it could go for like hundreds of thousands or millions of dollars even. It's a historical relic. You can't just like, I know you're like, hey, please, can we have it? But like, I don't know. Maybe? What's funny is that this is like the flip side of the British Museum question. I'm on like the opposite of my own opinion, and it's because it's like too close in recent memory. Like, hey, if I was in India and I found like a huge ruby or something like that, and the Indian Museum was like, hey, that's our ruby, I'd be like, well, you say that, but I found it, so will you pay me for it? What I'm trying to get to here from an overall thesis perspective is, I don't have any conviction in any of my beliefs, and I guess it's all, you know, sort of nuanced, and by nuanced I mean ill-informed and ignorant. Anyway, the point is, it's the key. I had a good time going to those museums. I like museums. I like good museums. There's a lot of really boring museums, and I feel like they give museums everywhere a bad name. Like, I've been to some of them. It happens, like, there's like a Canadian History Museum in Victoria, which is the capital of British Columbia, and Kate and I went to it, and I was like, it's cool. You can spend like an hour there and be like, I'm having a good time, but, you know, you never want to go again. You're kind of like, I get it. I can only look at, like, so many canoes. I get it. Here's this replica of a canoe used to, you know, go down the Fraser River. It's cool. It's not uncool, but, you know, you need... I almost feel like museums need to kind of come into the modern era a little bit. They need more interactivity, but I guess there's not that much money in like an industry where it's like, hey, suggested donations $10. Anyway, I had a good time doing that. Excuse me. Excuse me. Is our damage is not that bad. Why is this room taking us forever? I'm trying to think now. I'm like decompressing from that British Museum talk, and I'm trying to come back to Isaac, and I'm going like, first I get that I'm shooting them in the front of their face, and that's not how you kill these guys. But I'm also like, hey, I've shot you all 50 times. How are you alive? Is like one of these guys keeping the other ones alive? Is there a new champion I've never seen before? I'm losing it. I'm actually losing it. Does this guy regen the health of the other units? Because the flies, you would think, would be doing their job right now, right? Like, these flies do 12-something damage each. That was so close to death. Now, in a normal situation, I would just have a bomb here. Please open the doors and let me out. Let me guess. Now they all fall, like, in 2 seconds. We've actually been on this room for, like, 2.5 minutes. I'm kind of losing my mind. All this just to go to an item room, so it better be freaking amazing. Come on. No. I went full Giesling with that no, but I was very perturbed. I don't think fruitcake's worth it, but we can't really re-roll it, so I guess I'll roll it. You know, in the typical sense of the word. What are we on? We're on Dank Depths 1? Okay, so we are kind of amazingly ahead of schedule. And we're gonna get a deal with the devil here. There's actually a real chance. I was feeling negative about my my chances here, but that's not really fair. Both this run and the last run are pretty decent opportunities. Dude, if I picked up Spirit Hearts, you gotta be honest with me if I picked up Spirit Hearts, okay? Because I think that will kill the It's the Key challenge. Any of these, the tears up that we had earlier? I could totally see myself picking up Spirit Hearts, being a total idiot. But, I mean, if we win and we pick up Spirit Hearts, we don't get the achievement, at least we won. What I'm really looking for, in all honesty, is, like, if I could get a, like, a blank card Emperor sort of setup, I'd be thrilled. Dude, I also... So, and we're gonna have, this is like, there's little epochs, little eras in Isaac history, right? This is gonna be the post-Korea arc. Season 2 of Isaac, season 200 maybe. Almost picked that up, don't do that. One thing that I have never experienced when I lived in Korea, because when I lived in Korea, it was 2011. It wasn't pre-smartphones, but it was like, you know, I didn't have a smartphone. I didn't even have a cell phone when I lived in Korea, which is kind of... It's amazing to think that that was like 6 or 7 years ago, and I was like, I just don't, I'm living in a foreign country, I don't need, what do I need a cell phone for? I don't get it. It's not like I have anybody I want to use the telephone to call here. You know, the iPhone was like 2 years old at this point, and we were like, I don't know if this whole smartphone thing's gonna catch on. I mean, a phone that does other things? Seems crazy to me. But yeah, living in Korea, I didn't have a cell phone. Being there, with a smartphone, I realized, oh my god, Korea. I like many things about you. Please, God, modernize your roads so that all of the streets actually have names. And you're gonna think I'm joking. I'm not joking. Major streets have names. Many other streets, like once you get off of a main road, they just don't have names. Literally, Google Maps, you would be like, hey, I'd like to get to, like, this place. And Google Maps is like, here it is on the map. And then you click on the button that's, like, walking directions, and it says, no route found. By walking. And it's not like it's 300 miles up in the air. It's just, literally, Google is like, I don't know. The streets don't... I can't figure it out for you. So in Korea, they don't use Google as much. They use something called Naver. So we downloaded Naver Maps, And Neighbor Maps works a lot better, but is also just like, it makes my point for me. Because you know on Google Maps it'll be like, hey, walk down, you know, Electric Avenue, and then I'll take you higher. Walk down Electric Avenue and turn left at Baker Street, right? Neighbor Maps is like that. It goes like, hey, you're on this street, walk straight, and then when you get to Hyundai Oil Bank, turn left. Instead of using street signs, or, you know, street markers, they use businesses, which is probably fine if you speak really good Korean, which I do not. So for me, it was a freaking nightmare. You're walking down the street and they're like, turn left at Pong Pong Meat Shop, and you're like, what is Pong Pong Meat Shop? You're like looking, because the country also, like, every building is like 30 stories tall, so you're like looking up and you're like, is any one of these places Pong Pong Meat Shop? I can read Korean, although much more slowly than I read English, but it was a nightmare, dude. Please, my God. I'm not gonna go there and be like, hey, you know, stop eating, oh, I'm dead. Stop eating, you know, so much kimchi, start eating sandwiches, you know? But I will say, hey, please, God, get some real street names. You're killing me. How do you deliver packages? You drive for like a Korean delivery service, turn right at Pong Pong Meat Shop? Doesn't make sense to me. Anyway, thanks for watching. We're going to continue to try the It's the Key challenge at some point in the future. Didn't do too badly here, but there's not quite enough. For now, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, click the like button. Helps out a great deal. Of course, subscribe if you want to see more in the future. For now, thanks for watching, and I will see you next time.